We've built a toolbox to homeschool our kids. Our homeschooled kids' toolbox might include fresh markers, math workbooks and manipulatives, a day timer, a subscription to KiwiCo, and a library card, and a whole bunch of books. We might have done our research on homeschool philosophies and discovered where the local co-op is, or learned where online communities are that actually support us. How about homeschool podcasts or books? Planning books, idea books, books for kids, kids' book list books. We have all those things in our homeschool toolbox. But do we know how to confidently, capably use our homeschool tools in our toolbox so that it is wielded for the benefit of our kids and ourselves? What gets in the way of using our tools confidently and capably? Oftentimes it's the thing that we don't like talking about in our homeschool stories, the thing that truly gets in our way every single day. Our uncomfortable emotions, our big emotions, like feeling angry or anxious, uncertain, overwhelmed, or just feeling like we're just not doing this good enough. All big, uncomfortable emotions that keep us from feeling confident and clear in our homeschool choice. I'm Teresa Wiedrich from Capturing the Charmed Life. I write over at Capturing the Charmed Life, and you can find me online on Instagram and Facebook at Homeschool Mama Self-Care. I began writing at Capturing the Charmed Life because, well, I wanted the homeschool that was charmed. But I discovered that there were as many challenges as charms. Here's my story. So I'm Teresa. I've got 4 kids. I've been homeschooling around 15 years. I've been a parent for 21. In my heart, around maybe the 3rd or 4th year, I was really mouthing the words in my heart, "Help me," as the yellow school bus drove by. I found myself reacting to kids' squabbles or perpetually irritated that a child wouldn't show interest in their studies by saying, "If you don't do ... then you're getting on that bus Monday morning." Well, I knew I didn't actually want to research the local school's number, but I definitely didn't know what else to do. I felt done. I didn't have time for me, didn't even think about me. I didn't feel good in my body. I felt overwhelmed. I was also bored by repeated curriculum. I was uncertain that what I was doing was really going to yield what I intended in the long run, a fabulous education for my children and a whole bunch of fun memories for all of us. I did everything as perfectly as I could, but I still had this feeling it wasn't good enough. I wondered if I was doing right by my kids' education until I watched a Brené Brown TED Talk, and I realized that I didn't even factor me in to my life. At that point, things shifted, and I learned to begin to look after me so I could look after my kids. I hope that this seminar will inspire you to know this very thing, that our chief want is for someone who will inspire us to be what we know we could be. I believe in you. I know that you can include you in your homeschool, and you can deal with your big emotions so you can get out of your way and feel confident and clear on how you can wield your tools in your toolbox. So let's get started. So what tools do you need in your homeschool toolbox? Turns out you already have the tools. You have your emotions, you have your body, and you have your thoughts. But just because you have a tool doesn't mean you know how to wield it. It doesn't mean you know how to use it. and it doesn't mean you're taking care of it. I live on a 3-acre homestead on the edge of the Kootenai River. We blasted through granite to plumb a well, to create a flat space for a driveway and a garden, and for the house foundation on entirely raw land. We built a house, an outdoor fire pit, a chicken coop, a goat barn for Clover, Thistle, and Poppy, and for their guard dog Violet. A whole lot of tools have been used on this homestead. The one tool we use the most is an axe and a chainsaw, because there are a lot of trees in these mountains of Kootenai Mountains. Neither my husband nor I grew up using tools, not those kind of tools. But we've learned that you can't leave them out in the rain or they'll probably get damaged, and you have to regularly sharpen them. Just like your emotions, you can't leave them out in the rain. You can't pretend they don't exist. Just like your body, you have to use it regularly. And just like your thoughts, you have to regularly sharpen them. You can't leave them out in the rain. Oh, people do. People often tell themselves they're not feeling what they're feeling, either because somebody along the way told them that exact message, or because they realize that emotions sometimes are messy, uncomfortable, and they don't know how to deal with them, and they don't think other people will help acknowledge them, so why bother? Why bother? Turns out we were made with them. Human beings have human feelings, the full gamut of feelings. We cannot deny they exist, but we sure do sometimes. What could have been a tiny little snowball of an emotion runs down a mountain, snowy hill, and turns out gathers up more snow and becomes a boulder toward the end. And guess what? It does a whole lot more damage. What I've learned, you have to address your emotions. Here's how I suggest addressing your emotions. These are the tools in your emotion toolbox. Journaling, mirror work, a coach or therapist, mindfulness, and meditation. You first got to know what you're actually feeling, which assumes that you pay attention to your feelings. And one of the best ways that I know to address your feelings is in a journal, to write out what you're feeling. It helps you put all the stuff, a brain dump, onto a piece of paper and helps you clarify what's actually going on inside of you. I was first introduced to a journal at a Zeller's in northern Alberta as a child. It was the very first thing I ever bought when I was about 7, a green journal with a key and a lock. So cool. I really didn't have that much to say. Every morning for years I wrote, I woke up, I made my bed, I brushed my teeth. I'm glad that I brushed my teeth for years, but that is all I had to say. It did indeed, though, journaling, have a huge benefit for me in a challenging childhood. It helped me clarify my feelings, to kind of feel like I could be compassionate toward myself. No, I couldn't put it into words like that then, but it definitely helped me see that I was experiencing something that could be understood outside of myself. And it definitely helped me understand myself. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to ask you to grab your journal and a pen and let's do a journaling exercise together. Something that we do at our book club and at intensives on the regular. Got your pen? Got your journal? Here's the first question. What is the emotion preoccupying your present day? Where do you feel those feelings? Sometimes we feel them in our head, sometimes in our gut, sometimes in our heart. sometimes in the palms of our hands or in the base of our feet. Imagine back to the precipitating scenario, the scenario where you began to feel that feeling. What was going on? How long has it taken you to get out of that feeling, or are you still in it? What was the thought behind that feeling? Because there usually is a thought. We get frustrated because somebody didn't do what we asked, or we get uncertain of ourselves when we see the neighbor's kids do some cool expository essay and they're only 3. We get feeling not good enough when grandma comes over and asks our kids to recite the Gettysburg Address as Canadians, and our kids can't do it. What was the thought behind that particular feeling? And what is the story behind that thought? Usually there's a story that goes along with the thought. When we've seen our child not do something that we've asked on repeat, we often tell ourselves that kid is what? Lazy? Unmotivated? So distractible? Doesn't care about anybody? You fill in the blank, but there's always a story behind the thought, behind the feeling. So one of the best tools that we can use to figure out how we feel is grabbing a pen, grabbing a journal, and writing whatever comes to mind. One day I didn't have anyone to complain to. My good friend wasn't available on text. My husband was busy at work and couldn't respond. I wanted to say something like, I can't believe that my child did ... Honestly, cannot remember what the scenario was because whatever you can probably add to that ... is also what I can add to the ... So on this particular day, I didn't have someone to complain to. So I went to myself. I stood in front of a mirror. I looked at myself in the mirror and I saw someone angry, but also sad, flustered, overwhelmed, frustrated. Definitely a lot of emotions. I have learned that this is called mirror work. What do? You stand in front of a mirror. You pretend you're talking to a friend, but actually it won't be very difficult to do that because as soon as you see your upset face, you actually do really notice yourself differently. You notice how your eyes look squinted, maybe there's tears coming down your cheeks, maybe you're sobbing, maybe your nose is red, maybe you just look hot mad. Whatever it is, you notice yourself, you see yourself, which usually means when you see your face, it actually makes you feel some way, kind of compassionate. And what do we do when we see a friend in that kind of place? We usually want to say something kind, like, sorry, I've been there. I feel for you. Oh, really? Did they do that? Oh, parenting can be hard. Homeschooling can be harder. Whatever you're saying to your friend when they look like that, you can say it to yourself. This is known as one of many self-compassionate techniques. And in my one-on-one work with homeschool moms, I have shared this particular tool to do your own mirror compassionate work. I've suggested it many times because I have done it many times. And it softens my heart. It makes me feel taken care of. But more importantly, I've learned that though there is value in speaking to my husband or speaking to my friend or my mom or whoever that I can complain to, sometimes I don't really need to complain as much as I need to feel compassion towards myself in how I'm feeling. So, on that thought, let's look back to the scenario that you initially spoke about in your journal exercise. If you were to give yourself a little talk like you would to a friend, what would you say to you? But sometimes you actually do need a different human. It is invaluable having some objective person like a coach or a mentor or a therapist, have someone like that engage you because they're human and they will mirror you and be kind to you and compassionate toward you because that's what they do. But they also aren't invested in your story, and they have tools that they have been taught in order to address the challenges that you do have. So sometimes, do you need another human if you're having this challenge on repeat? Sometimes we do. And I just want to say, so you know, I have been to a therapist. I have a therapist. I have a coach for different reasons. I've sent a child to a therapist, even learned you actually can't send kids to the therapist unless you want to be told that you actually need therapy yourself. There's a reason your child probably needs a therapist. But the money that you spend on an objective source like a coach or a therapist is worth its weight in gold. Might I recommend a very accessible approach heading to BetterHelp? It's an online therapy tool with a real human being on the other end, virtual therapy, easy to access. Of course, I'm a homeschool mama mentor, and I'm happy to also walk alongside you. You can listen to me chat with one of my past therapists, my actual therapist, in season 1 of my podcast, Homeschool Mama Self-Care. Wow, was that full circle for me and even for him. Got him crying in 2 minutes. So, note to self, why you don't want to keep it between you and your partner or you and your best friend, this challenge, is because sometimes they are as invested in the story and feel their own feelings around whatever challenge you're having, and they just can't keep things as objective as a coach or therapist can. A mindfulness practice is a tool in your toolbox, and I might add, I think one of the biggest ones that we can wield. Yeah, it's cool and trendy, just like kale and quinoa, but it's cool and trendy for a really good reason. You are learning all about you. You're learning all about your emotional climate, who you are on a secure feeling day, on an insecure feeling day, on a content day, or in a frustrated moment, in a challenging moment. You are beginning to learn who you are at core. What are your triggers? What are your challenges? But a mindful practice helps you to just be. But I know you're busy. I know you're busy. I know your life well. I have experienced it for a good long time, and it is very demanding. There's a lot of emotions, and there's a lot of kids with a lot of emotions that they have. So you actually have to schedule these mindful moments. I schedule mine for 11 a.m. every morning in my iPod. Yes, I said iPod. I don't have a phone. But every morning at 11 a.m., I get a buzz, and it says, breathe. So I stop no matter what I'm doing, and I breathe. Which I'll add is kind of cool because whenever you have any of those indicators go off anywhere on any device, my instinct, I've been trained into breathing. So I can't even say the word without breathing. Mindfulness is vegetables for your brain, or a space to breathe and to just be. In these moments, you can always return to your journal and ask yourself, how are you feeling right now? You can go through the exercise that I began in journaling exercises and ask yourself, what's the feeling preoccupying me right now? And what was the scenario precipitating it? Get to know yourself. This is a mindfulness practice that really gives you an opportunity to snatch a moment of the day to being present, like really present. Practicing being present makes you actually feel like you're really living your life. So 4 questions. I actually have a free reminder PDF available at the end of the seminar that will remind you of what is the most important things that you need to remember when trying to be mindful. Remember that your feelings are fueled by your thoughts. Your thoughts are actually choices. You can actually practice to think differently, to get an alternate perspective that actually bears out in a healthier approach to your thought. But it requires regular work, consistent work. So I might recommend doing a thought challenge a month. At the top of your journal every morning when you're doing your morning routine, you can write the word overwhelm, or not good enough, or doubt, or anger, or disappointment, or whatever dominant feeling you've learned is your most uncomfortable feeling that you experience on the regular in your homeschool. Write that at the top. Then begin to notice in your mindful moments, am I feeling overwhelmed right now? And what are the reasons? What was the story behind my overwhelm today? Do that over the course of a month. Add in your journal every morning what it is that's precipitating that, and you will gain greater self-awareness and clarity as to what is the real challenge in your homeschool. And talk about sharpening that tool in your toolbox. When you use the tool of meditation or prayer, you are creating changes in your brain. You're shifting how the neural network pathways move, which is really helpful if you have created patterns or you participated in cementing patterns from your childhood that you know are not the best patterns, reactive patterns, unhealthy patterns, instinctive patterns. Patterns that didn't create a lot of awareness or clarity or comfort inside of you, but they were just instinct. Meditation gives you space to feel the feelings, to accept that they're there, but to practice just being a human being instead of being a human doing, as they say, being separate from your feelings and your thoughts. As a note, I know from past experience and from others that I'm surrounded with that the idea of meditation seems really uncomfortable because some of us have associated with a meditation with a particular kind of religion, and therefore we feel like we can't participate. Fair enough. I can come from that background and understand where you're coming from, and at the same time I can also say the goal is to just be, not try to be in a different religion, not to engage something that feels uncomfortable. It is simply just being. It's not even trying to stop thinking or feeling. In fact, good luck with that. It's not happening. And the research that I've learned and the things that I've learned about meditation, our goal is not about not thinking or not feeling or telling ourselves that we can't do those things, but it is being comfortable with those feelings and thoughts inside of us and allowing them to just be there, but to separate a bit from them And wouldn't it be nice to be separate sometimes from our thoughts and just be? Well, you can. You just need to practice. 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 How to do it? Well, if you want to make it really simple, jump on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel with a bunch of resources on meditation, morning meditation, evening meditation, midday meditation, meditation for stress, 5-minute meditations, loving kindness meditations. Try any of them out. See what works for you. When we start with a guided meditation, it makes us feel like we could actually get into this because someone is showing us how to do it. So go jump on that YouTube channel or just go onto a regular YouTube channel and check out a few meditation videos. The thing is, our bodies are the house for our feelings or our emotions and our thoughts. And they're interconnected. They're not separate. Because they're interconnected, we need to take care of them. The least exciting aspect of looking after you and wielding your tools is sleep. Nutrition is a close second because we've been so trained by it. And do we really need to hear another discussion about exercising? We also need to think about separateness, grounding techniques, and breath work. Sleep is the most important tool in your body's toolbox. Sleep is the base requirement to sanity, and we know it as moms. I remember my first year and a half as a mom thinking, am I ever going to sleep again? This child will not sleep through the night. And I thought I would lose my mind. So my heart is with you if you're at that point. But that child is now 21 and she mostly sleeps through the night. And it turns out, though it was not really all that encouraging to me when someone would say this too shall pass, turns out it's true. This too really does pass. But we really can do some things to look out for our sleep in the meantime. We can wake up at the same time every day. Sleep research says that going to bed at the same time every day is not as effective as waking up at the same time every day, even on weekends. And if you have little kids, it's probably 7 or earlier, isn't it? So you might not need an alarm clock. But if you want to encourage sleep habits, you definitely want to wake up at the same time every day. And a thought about late nights staying up to get a little bit of time by yourself. Been there, done that. So I'm not going to tell you not to do it. I do know that there were times, like possibly months, where my 2 oldest daughters would bring me a cup of coffee in the morning and say, Mom, are you up? I think it's time to homeschool, because I was really tired with 4 little kids under the age of 8 or maybe 9 or 10. And at that time I was very tired and I was trying to make up for lost quiet time by myself. And I used it at about 10, 11 o'clock at night, which definitely interfered with good sleep. So the key would ideally be if you could find anywhere sometime in the week by yourself without the kids, where somebody's looking after the kids and you can have full quiet, absolutely no responsibilities. That's the ideal, right? You can deepen your sleep doing a few really simple things. Decreasing caffeine, especially after lunchtime, putting your screens away an hour before bedtime. Exercising every day will definitely deepen your sleep. And if you're having, just a need for a deeper sleep, you can go to a natural food store and find a sleep aid that might have GABA or L-theanine, L5-hydroxytryptophan, melatonin, valerian, passion flower and a little bit of lemon balm, some combinations of something like that you can discuss with a natural doctor or naturopath. And certainly if you are taking any medications at the time, you should discuss it with a medical physician to make sure that it doesn't interfere. But some basic supplements, some simple natural supplements that really can deepen your sleep are things that I and my medical doctor husband have used at different times in our lives. Nutrition. Okay, so I could probably stop the seminar right now and let you teach it. I think most people could teach a webinar or a seminar or a short course on eating well. We all know what we're supposed to be eating and what we're not supposed to be eating. We have all been taught. Now, as I shared in a recent nutrition challenge I had in my Facebook group, I've tried every diet. I was born in the early 70s. I was exposed to all the diets of the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, and I remember my mother dancing along to Jane Fonda's aerobic workouts. Just as an aside, Jane Fonda looks amazing, doesn't she? Okay, so I think that every one of us could probably teach nutrition. We have had mixed messages about the things that we eat, about how we should look, and the reality of our actual physical bodies do not match what you might see on a magazine cover. And sometimes we're encouraged to align those two, and I am not your girl. I'm not going to encourage that. If you've been challenged like me in this area of body image, then let's talk brain health instead. Don't care about the body and what it looks like for the sake of image. Let's just consider brain health. Because like Dr. Daniel Amen says, when you change your brain, you change your life. If you go to the gas station and you put a gas nozzle into your Subaru like I do, and you say, "I'd like hot chocolate, please," and put hot chocolate into your car, it ain't gonna work like it would if you put gasoline. Same thing for your brain. Although that'd be pretty cool, right? Okay, so let's eat the rainbow. We all know, we've been told we can eat the rainbow, which really means put more stuff that has color, that probably is the stuff that you're not always thinking about, like the greens or the reds, like beets or kale or spinach or salad, or literally everything that you see in the produce section. Put all of that stuff into your meals more. Just more. Fewer browns. I happen to be recording this on American Thanksgiving, and is there a meal more fraught with brown than our Thanksgiving meals? I don't think so. Having said that, the graphic here is a discussion, really is a little picture of beef broth, chicken broth, and vegetable broth, which are all beneficial to our bodies as well. Now, I think the goal, though, with nutrition is really just mindful eating, is being a little bit more self-aware, intentionally choosing foods. So some days that means you are intentionally eating the peanut M&Ms, and some days you are intentionally drinking a glass of wine, and some days you are intentionally saying, I don't need to do that all the time, so I can have a sparkling glass of water, or I can have carrots and hummus, or I can have whatever, but be more intentional about it and really think as you're putting something into your mouth, am I hungry right now? One of the fastest ways you can add greens into your day is by doing it in the morning. Yeah, but not like a salad. I mean like a green smoothie. This could be a little homeschool science experiment, a fun one. Do a blind taste test with your kids. All you need to do is add a block of frozen spinach, which you can find in the frozen spinach aisle. You can add whatever frozen fruit you like, half a banana, almond milk or some other milk that you like, maybe a little of a green supplement like spirulina or chlorella. You could add kale or whatever greens you want, but make sure that the blender actually really blends it so you don't actually see any kale pieces. Then do a blind taste test. Your kids will be very surprised, or you'll be even more surprised than your kids to discover that they will indeed drink a green smoothie because it tastes really good and it's wonderful fuel for your brain. So wield one of the most important tools in your physical toolbox, your nutrition. So you're a homeschool mom and you've probably heard that maybe the kids need to do some physical education or gym class or PE or whatever you want to call it. And you can unschool exercise. You don't have to make it something formal, but you definitely need to exercise. You and the kids. But think fun, not pain. Or think pain if you're that kind of person. But think fun, not pain. You can make your exercise time a lot of fun every day. Just choose activities that you actually want to do, preferably outdoors. Nature therapy is a thing. You get your vitamin D, you start moving at the pace of the outdoors, a whole lot slower and quieter, more peaceful. Sometimes you want to do it with the kids because you can do activities with them so they can burn off their tension and decrease their stress or just get the wiggles out. They can increase their happy hormones, which is kind of happy and useful for you. But sometimes you also want to exercise without the kids because sometimes there are some activities you just want to do alone. And alone time is always useful for you, homeschool mama. The thing about exercise obviously keeps you able to eat those peanut M&Ms more regularly and not noticing it. It helps you decrease stress too, though. Burning off tension, kind of important on some days. It increases endorphins, those happy hormones that you need rushing through your body. I personally prefer doing a little bit of yoga. Yoga is like an Advil, minus the potential tummy troubles you're going to have if you overuse Advil. Just a little bit of stretching goes a long way if you want to play with your kids. Strengthening exercises like weights or a variety of possible ways to do strengthening, but a few times a week. You could do a dance party with the kids. If you want to get your alone time, you could get onto an exercise bike or an elliptical or whatever other machinery you have, or maybe head to the gym. Plug in your iPod, your earphones and listen to your podcasts, preferably my podcast. And also you could walk, you could run, you could walk the dog, you could do any activity that is fun for you. Make it fun. You can always make it fun somehow. And I like to think of exercise seasonally. Really because it helps me to know what kind of exercise equipment I should pull out, like the tennis rackets and the tennis balls come out for September, and we pull out the canoe probably most of the year except for the snowy parts of the year, and a kayak and paddleboard, and we go for hikes at all times of the year, but you can actually think seasonally so that you can introduce a new activity that you never get bored. And if you don't have any of those things, find a neighbor who has a trampoline and get on that thing with your kids, and you will discover why those kids can get some serious exercise playing out in the backyard. You love your kids. That's why you're doing this homeschool thing, right? You love them, but you are not them. That is why you need to be separate. One day, you will not be with them. And so right now you can develop you even as you are homeschooling. Sometimes we definitely don't feel like we have the time for that. It's important to continue to nurture the you that is also a homeschool mom, because someday you probably won't be a homeschool mom unless you decide to homeschool the kids next door. So, who were you when you were 8 or 21? And who are you now? What do you like to do? What would you do if you had 1 hour? And nope, I do not mean the grocery store. This is really a question for you. Do you actually use the grocery store as your separate time or your quiet time? It is your sign that you need more quiet. Now, I know that just like sleep, trying to get sleep when your kids are really little, or trying to find quiet when your kids are really little, next to impossible unless you have noise cancellation headphones or a nanny. And since I have never met a homeschool mom that has a nanny, but kudos to you if you have one, the grocery store experiment helps reveal to you how much in need you are of having separate time. So if you're in the grocery store and you're picking out the grapes and trying to figure out, are these bananas the right bananas? They're organic, but do I need organic bananas? Because, it's got to peel. So you're peeling it away from the banana and you're enjoying your time in the produce department. You probably need more quiet time. Possibly a retreat. I have a mini retreat on my website, capturingthecharmlife.com. Now, a good old-fashioned retreat really is there to help you be with yourself, spend some time with yourself, start to discover who you really are and what you're really all about and what you really like to do outside of the homeschool mom life. Now, the thing is, the homeschool mom life is not only at times consuming and really is a lot of energy and requires a lot of energy. It's a lot of fun too. We get to do a lot of fun stuff with our kids. We can do things like, ancient history, and really we're actually just dressing our kids up in togas and we're getting them a plate of grapes and olives and wine and all the things. And then we're going to go sit in the great room, listening to some music, maybe reading a book about this civilization, and we're calling that social studies or history. And we're asking them to feed us grapes, olives, and wine. It's a sweet life. We enjoy this life. It's so much fun. But there is a time and a space for you to be separate and to develop who you are outside of the homeschool mom role. So, who are you? Who are you? How do you want to nurture you and your interests and your identity outside of your homeschool mom role? P.S. You need to know your vision, your homeschool vision. Here's why. Okay, so you need to know why you're homeschooling and be really clear on what the reasons are, because it helps you to know when to stop doing all the things for your kids and doing all the things that you think you need to do for your kids. Feel a sense of separateness from that compelling need to always doing more. So that's my thoughts on separateness. Grounding techniques. Have you heard the concept of grounding techniques? When you are in a very distressed place, a very intense place, you can be directed to identify what you're seeing, smelling, hearing, tasting, and feeling. Probably just to get yourself out of your mind and aware that all these things outside of you are the same as they were 10 minutes before this big challenging moment, and you are okay, and everything is still okay. That's why we practice those mindful moments of really checking in with our body and with our hearts and our just feeling what we're feeling inside of our body, to identify how we're feeling, to practice being at ease and quiet, so that when those really big challenging moments come, as they usually do in one's lifetime, certainly have in the last 2 years, we can practice feeling okay despite this big challenge right in front of us. I'll tell you a story from my experience right off the top of the pandemic as someone married to a medical physician who also happens to be the the chief of staff at the local hospital. He organizes a lot. He's very aware of what the dynamics are for the hospital. And so I was privy to some of the things that they were being communicated to, and essentially how they were going to approach the pandemic and how they were going to approach people in the emerge and in all the different elements of the hospital. And it was unnerving for me, and it made me feel very anxious, as I'm sure you have a story around that as well, don't we all? Someone had said to me in a particularly anxious moment, you want to practice a grounding technique. It means that for just a few moments you stop, no matter how intense you feel, no matter how anxious you feel, and ask yourself, what do I see right now? What do I see? I see a blue wall with my wedding picture up on the blue wall. What do I smell? I think I smell a roast chicken in the other room. What do I hear? I hear my husband and my son trying to fill up the wood-burning hot tub that we just put together. What do I taste? Not much. Haven't eaten anything for a while. What do I feel? I feel my legs. They're kind of cold underneath my pajamas because I'm still wearing pajamas at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And now I identify that this is what I've seen, I've smelled, I've heard, I've tasted, I've felt, and I come back into my body and less in a panic state or in an anxious state. It helps to ground me. These mindful moments, these moments of getting into our bodies, these grounding techniques help us practice for the really challenging moments in life. When I see the word breath, I breathe. Right now, can you breathe? Yeah, I know you're breathing like you're always breathing, or you couldn't possibly be listening to this, but intentional breathing helps our mind slow down. We need to actually learn to breathe intentionally when we're having those challenging moments. Yeah, I know it's natural, but sometimes we don't do it naturally. Sometimes we do very short breaths, and they do not make us feel at ease. They contribute to a sense of anxiety. Now, really what we're doing is helping to develop body sensory practice, like those grounding techniques, to be able to feel what's happening inside of our body, to feel our neck or to feel tension, what's happening in our hands, in our feet, in our heart, in our stomach. These are like mindful moments, but with intentional breathing. Intentional breathing will slow down all the different systems in your body. It's like putting your foot on a brake or putting your foot on an accelerator, depending on how you do it, but it will actually slow your body's physiological mechanisms down as you are intentionally breathing. You can practice it with your kids because they also need to know how to handle their big emotions, but you could do that with me right now. So what we're going to do is breathe in for 5, hold it for 5, breathe out for 5. So breathe in, hold, breathe out. Do that 10 times. You will feel a lot less uncomfortable. The third tool in your homeschool toolbox is your thoughts. We're going to get curious about your thoughts. Actually explore your thoughts. Is your thought true? Are you 100% sure it's true? Consider alternate perspectives, learn to reframe, and practice the process. Get curious. Learn more about your thoughts. How do you respond? How do you respond when your child won't sit down to do studies, but it's 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or 12 o'clock, whatever? How do you respond when your child did know the times tables months ago and then all of a sudden magically they don't know any of their times tables? How do you respond when your kids are complaining about the ancient Greek party that you put together in your spare time? You spent hours in Pinterest getting ideas. You went to the secondhand store and bought some white sheets and some grapevines for their hair. You went to the grocery store and you bought the olives and the grapes and the feta cheese, and they want to do ancient Egyptian history instead. How do you respond when the local homeschoolers mom group votes you as a homeschool co-op coordinator this year? How do you respond when your in-laws pop in as a surprise during a weekday? What are your thoughts? How do you respond? You get to practice the pause. Practice pause. You don't have to respond immediately, but you can learn to get to know what your thoughts are and definitely learn what your emotions are, because they are your signs of how you're feeling, and then asking yourself, what are the thoughts that you had before you had that feeling? You can't ignore your emotions. You totally can ignore your emotions. You can, and people do, and we are not healthy when we ignore our emotions. They are our signs of something going on in here. I'm pointing to my head and heart that we need to actually identify that something's going on that we need to address, especially if it's happening on repeat. So know thyself. We've already spoken to how journaling and mindful moments and an objective coach or therapist can help develop that in us. Sometimes when we're talking to a friend or a partner or someone close and we're sharing our big challenges or our thoughts in our homeschool challenges, sometimes that mirrored projection is actually not really that helpful, because those people are in our stories and not nearly as objective in our stories as someone outside of that story. Of course, they can be helpful. Also, they can help us practice being complainy and being unhappy and continuing on the same path of not addressing the issue, but just being frustrated about it. So sometimes we need someone objective to discuss the challenge with. But get curious. What are your thoughts? Is your thought even true? Maybe, not necessarily. There's something funny in there that goes on inside our brain that, yeah, it can be kind of like a garbage basket. We can think all sorts of things that sometimes are true, but not necessarily. I know instinctively, I wondered when people asked me that originally, what do you mean, is my thought true? Of course it's true. Why would I be thinking it if it wasn't true? Well, there's a few reasons. Practice patterns, unhealthy practice patterns. The idea of asking if our thoughts are true was 100% revolutionary for me. Now I know that no, not every thought is true. And you know how you know? Because all you need is a best friend or a partner to learn that they don't think the same way that you do. Therefore, your thought is not necessarily true. So you've asked yourself, is your thought true? And instinctively you want to say yes. So then you can ask the second question, are you 100% certain it's true? Because there's a bit of fake news out there. Some moments our thoughts can totally be fake news. It's not just on social media. It can sometimes be in our heads. We've developed patterns of thinking over the course of our lives, and some of them have been useful. Some of them are true. Some of them are defense mechanisms. So sometimes they're not true. Here's how you know it might not be true. Like I said, you have a partner, you have a best friend, or a parent, or someone significant in your life that really can tell you their opinion or their perspective on the same scenario you're looking at. Almost 100% of the time, you will not find everyone in your sphere that agrees with you that your thought is true. And that's because we do indeed have different perspectives. And then you discovered there are alternate perspectives. The first time you had a baby, you discovered it wasn't like you thought. It never is that first time that you anything. Before I had my first baby, someone told me, you better get your sleep because you're going to be very tired. I couldn't believe they said that. I was 7 months pregnant with my first baby, working night shifts in pediatrics and the perinatal float pool. I was going to have so much good sleep after my baby was born, and I was going to finally get to tap into all those hobbies I had. Like I was going to finish all the scrapbooks before I got pregnant and had a baby. It was going to be so much free time. Yeah, different perspective after the baby was born. Do you remember the first time you were partnered with someone significant? You finally found your person, the most perfect person in the world, and you found that person. And then you had your first conflict. And then you went, maybe there's another perfect person. Do you remember the first time before you were homeschooled, what you thought about homeschooling? So many of us actually say, I would never homeschool because that is for weird people. I said that. Yes, I really did. I am a mainstream kind of gal. I do mainstream kind of things. I am not a homeschooler. I do not own a jean jumpsuit. Still don't. Do you remember the first time? You can name so many first times, and your perspective of what it was like before and your perspective what it was like after, radically different. How about the challenge that you're facing right now? You see it a certain way. It's not necessarily what you see. There are alternate perspectives, and we all need to entertain those alternate perspectives. How we frame things, how we understand things or choose our perspective, choose our thoughts, is a choice. The framing we choose is a choice. Have you ever stopped on the side of a road in the mountains and you've seen a fresh water spring? That spring came down the mountain, probably miles and miles higher than you can see, but it chose a rivulet and it went down that path until it created its own space every year, so that every year you drive past that mountain spring, you know it's going to be at about that time in your trip. And so you see that water coming down, and maybe you stop on the side of the road to get some fresh water, or maybe you see animals at that spring, but every year it's the same location. And the reason it's the same location is because the water practiced going down the mountain on that same path. And that's the way your brain works. So when we practice thinking our thoughts, we actually are practicing what is essentially a neural network in our brain, and the thought continues to go down that path, and we are very comfortable with that thought and that perspective, just like we are very familiar with that water spring on the side of the road at that point in our journey. You know, the lens in your eye enables your ability to see things. And isn't that the case with our thoughts? That when we choose different thoughts, we see things differently. Very interesting that just weeks ago, I sat in an optometrist's office, had that machine put in front of me, and I was asked a few questions. Is this lens clearer or this one? You know how they go back and forth between A and B, 1 or 2. And to my utter surprise, I couldn't see out of my right eye. I could not even see the big E on the wall. I did not recognize that I couldn't see through that eye until this optometrist identified it. I learned that I needed to change my lenses. They were opaque. I wasn't seeing very much. Now, months later, weeks later, I've had those lenses changed, and I am able to drive and see on the side of the road all the signs as I drive home at night. I did not even identify that I couldn't see those words on those signs at night before, and now I can. The clarity is there because I changed my lens. This is the same way it works with our thoughts. We get to choose our thoughts. We get to choose our perspective. But easy it is not. We need to practice, 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 practice. The mountain spring on the side of the road only landed on the side of the road for sheer practice. Dr. Caroline Leaf is another podcast I encourage you to check out if any of this interests you. She is a neuro researcher that has done a lot of research on the brain and refers to something called the neurocycle, which really is, for her, in her definition, a way for us to understand that our brain creates connections because we choose our thoughts the way we choose them, and we choose them on repeat. And when we choose them on repeat, we make it more firm and more solid. And so we are able to change those thoughts and those thought patterns and that perspective, but we have to be intentional about it. And it takes, she says, 63 days. It takes a lot of intentional practice. But as Van Gogh has said, Vincent van Gogh, the Impressionist artist, he said, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. So I know that whatever challenges you have in your homeschool, though it be incredibly massive as a mountain that you even see right in front of you, it is possible for you to learn to create different rivulets down the mountain, different thought patterns, different perspectives that will most definitely influence how you experience your homeschool and your kids. It has been such a pleasure chatting with you today. I do genuinely wish for you and your family a charmed homeschool journey. But I know, because these beautiful 4 children, these beautiful human beings that I birthed and got to learn all about in the world, have definitely given me many, many opportunities to learn a whole lot about me and the challenges that have been inside of me long before they were born. And they've given me so much pleasure and joy and challenge and growth. And for those moments that you experience with your family, with your children, and you say, this is just too challenging. No, girlfriend, you really can do this. You can turn your homeschool challenges into your homeschool charms, and you can most definitely wield the tools that are in your toolbox to experience the homeschool that you want. All the best.